you ready to feel old? I know I did when I first booted this game back up. And if the game itself or the Xbox 360 title screen don't make you feel old, how about the social options on one of the first screens? Because yes, that says exactly what you think it says. And yes, this game also had that functionality back in the day. And after one of the first cutscenes, we actually get our first taste of driving in this game. And I've got to tell you, not only are the driving physics honestly exactly as I remember, but they're also so different from anything that's on sale today in terms of driving games. And another theme of this intro sequence is the back and forth dialogue between Tanner and Jones. And while sure, the intro sequence is definitely one of the more, I would say almost one of the more iconic elements of this game, there's a lot of people on YouTube that when they revisit this game, they'll play through the intro sequence and then that's kind of about all they do. So we're going to actually skip ahead past the intro sequence and try to focus in on some of the other elements that made this game so incredibly good. And also why I think it's so hard to replicate a game like this, or rather replicate a style like the one that this game brings to the table. Because when you stop and think, and you look around at the landscape of games that have been released in between when this game came out and then the present day, honestly, there's pretty much nothing that captures the same kind of style and energy that this game does. And I didn't really realize how much I missed that specific energy until I went back and booted this game up again and played it. And I was like, holy crap, the style, the energy, the game world, I wouldn't say immersion in the realistic sense, but more like the immersion in the sense of you get attached to the world, you get attached to the overall experience, and you get attached to what I think the main character can do, that even when you're just playing through the story missions, I honestly found myself losing track of time and just, going around the game world, driving different cars and doing different random missions that, I don't know, it just really put into perspective how incredibly well this game world was actually designed. But before we ramble on more over the intro sequence of the game, let's go ahead and get into some gameplay so we can actually talk about what made the gameplay so incredibly unique and what made the driving physics so good, and honestly what made this game one of the most incredibly entertaining games of its time, and why I still believe the gameplay holds up to literally this very day. But enough rambling about the intro sequence, let's go ahead and talk about how this game actually plays and feels, and why I love the driving physics so much.
Should've listened to you. Damn, I was an asshole. We can argue about who was the bigger asshole after we catch that bastard. Ah, damn! Keep him inside, Tanner. Yeah, that was the plan.
The driving physics in this game are literally a textbook exercise on how to make a driving system that feels approachable yet still have depth. It's also a masterclass on physics that are easy to approach and use, but that also are still fun to drive and never really feel boring.
Where'd he go? Whoa, he's behind us! Come on, man, drive!
And I will never forget the tension of playing through this scene for the very first time. This intro sequence literally felt like playing through an action film, and I will never be able to articulate that in any other way, because at the end of the day, honestly, this game may as well have been an action film that you played through. And in terms of entertainment, I actually got more entertainment value out of this game than, ironically, a lot of action films that I've watched. And once Tanner gets hit by the truck, you actually end up kind of going through a lot of different cinematic elements, and then you learn how to shift. And shifting is essentially the core mechanic of the game, or rather the game mechanic that pretty much everything else is based around, because shifting allows you to effectively swap from your own car/body into that of other cars and drivers. And to my knowledge, this was honestly one of the only, if not the only, driving game, or rather driving/action game, that prioritized a sort of body swap system as one of the main gameplay dynamics. Because if you think about it, this system gets used a lot throughout the course of the game to help you complete missions. It also gets used a lot to help you eventually reach the final goal and final target of the game itself. And when you really get in and think about it, you realize that without that gameplay dynamic of Tanner actually being able to shift, literally the entire game would not work. So, or rather, it would have to be completely torn apart, redone, and rebuilt. And I do think they really did an interesting job explaining how the system works when they introduced Tanner getting accustomed to the concept of shifting in this interaction in the ambulance.
I'm in the ambulance.
No shit, genius. We got a head trauma in the back and the ER is that way. Eyes on the city, Ray. Come on, let's go.
I'm Ray? Ray?
Come on, Ray. Gas pedal's the one on the right.
Yeah, okay. I got this. Partner, where to?
And what's also interesting is while the game will continue to show you the character model of Tanner in the driver's seat of the vehicle, it shows him looking in the mirror and seeing a different reflection of, which in this scene would be Ray, which implies that all throughout this game, even though you, the player, are seeing Tanner's character model, everyone else in the game is seeing whoever Tanner is controlling at that moment. And honestly, when you think about almost how deep the lore behind that could actually go, it honestly makes you think a little bit. It makes you think about how much they could have expanded upon this game world, but not only the game world, the overall concept of what this game created in its own universe. And I don't necessarily want to think about that too deeply, because the more deeply I think about it, the more sad I get that we're probably not going to see another Driver game. Who knows, maybe ever? And I don't know, I don't want to say that as like a downer, but I say it more along the lines of, would I love another one? Absolutely I would. But I also don't know if this game would still work, or rather games in this series would still work in the current gaming environment. And of course, you cannot forget, or rather you cannot gloss over, the banter, the amazing banter between your character and the NPCs. However, what's so cool about it is that even though you are technically a singular character within this game, you're also everyone. I mean, think about that for a second. For example, in the story of GTA 5, you play as 3 different people, whereas in this game, you play as one person, but also everyone that is driving around on the road. It's kind of an odd thing to explain, but it goes back to the idea of you can technically be literally whoever you want. Like, prime example, you can go from being a taxi driver to being a business person that's test driving a Ford GT.
Oh yeah, this is the real deal. Way too much grunt for a greenhorn. get us into some serious trouble.
Yes, sir, you certainly could.
I'm just gonna floor it, okay?
Go right ahead. Can I take it from your exuberant driving you'll be putting down a deposit?
Still thinking about it.
I do also think that the amount of it's almost like this borderline adorable level of snarkiness that Tanner always has throughout the game, I think honestly makes him a really likable character and genuinely makes you want to not only finish the game and keep playing through it, but it makes a lot of the interactions in the game a whole lot more interesting. What's also interesting is that this game handles the concept of patrols throughout the world in a very interesting way, because they can either be out for you, or they can totally be like out against you. And the way it handles things and the way it intermixes all of these elements into one cohesive game world is such an interesting dynamic. And let's also not forget that you can drive a Dodge Neon. And any game that features a Dodge Neon is just, I mean, it's top tier. It's top tier 10 out of 10. IGN! But from a serious note, I think the fact that this game actually featured so many real world, like almost just pedestrian level traffic cars, I think a lot of people really related to being able to use these cars in almost a way where even the most mundane of cars could become hero cars in their own right, whether that was a Neon or a random like Crown Vic or a taxi or a city bus. And of course, you also had your own garage where you would be able to actually purchase all of these cars and deploy them whenever you wanted to. And the amount of iconic cars in this game, oh, it was so high. It was so genuinely high. The amount of just pure icons, not only of its time, but of honestly just of car culture in general. And it really does lean heavily into that element of car culture as you make your way through the game. Now, if you're into customization, that's not necessarily going to be on offer here. However, what you lose in terms of customization, I would honestly say you gain that back in a lot of other ways and a lot of other dynamics, because this is, in a lot of ways, this game almost feels like a really gritty Burnout Paradise with characters and a story, and also the body swapping, but that's a different subject. And I know I keep going back to this, but the beauty of these driving physics, they are so incredible in terms of just, I mean, genuine masterclass in terms of arcade driving game physics. They are so smooth, they are so approachable, and yet they have enough depth that if you do decide to dedicate a lot of time to this game, by the time you finish the story, honestly, you'll actually be really good at not only the driving in the game, but I think you'll have discovered an extra level of depth within those physics that you maybe wouldn't have discovered in your first, hour, 2 hours or so of gameplay. And honestly, at the end of the day, what I really want to get to with this video is if you have this game sitting around in your house, like an old copy that you never played, or you see it for a really good deal at a local used game store or something, or you see a copy for sale for really cheap online, you should get it. Not only should you get it, but you should get it and you should play it all the way through, because it is such an incredible experience. And yes, the story can be a little repetitive at times, especially around the halfway to 3/4 mark within the game, because some of the missions, in my experience, they do get a little grindy, but that's something that you can kind of work your way around. And I mean, some slightly grindy missions aside, this is just truly a gem. It was a gem of its time, and it is still a gem to this day, and the game still holds up on so many levels. It is so much fun. It looks amazing, and if you have the chance to play it, I genuinely recommend that you do before it's not really able to be played anymore. And if you enjoyed this revisit to Driver San Francisco, let me know your thoughts and opinions in those comments down below. And if you're new around here and you would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button and of course, turn those notifications on. And I will see y'all next time.